Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. This morning we are discussing the debate on pesticides and around which the stakeholders have raised concerns about the input and what's banned in other markets still used in Kenya and what ought to be the input across farms in the country. Dr. Paul Ngaruya is the Acting General Manager, Research and Strategy, the Pest Control Products Board. He's here with us this morning, as well as Emmanuel Atamba, Food Systems Policy Expert. Okisegere Ojepat is the CEO of Fresh Produce Consortium in Kenya, and Barasa Wanyonyi is the Head of Registration Department at the Pest Control Products Board. And coming to you first, Barasa, given that there was a question there raised by the lawmaker, and which was on the 200 pesticides, and you had the registration department. Then tell us about these 200 pesticides and whether you have done a critical examination, or scientifically that is, and whether you have established that the reasons or the rationale for their banning in the European market, for example, satisfies why they should be banned in Kenya or why they shouldn't.
Thank you so much for having me. First, I would like to say that PCPB has regulations in place that guide us on what we are supposed to do on matters pesticides. And then number two, we don't just look at what PCPB does in terms of the legislation on the Act. We also look around on the other legislations within the country that guide on matters to do with health and the environment. We go ahead and also look at international scene on matters to do with pesticides. Now, coming to the issue of the petition, we know that around 32 molecules were touched in the petition. And because when there's noise, we need to look back and see what we are doing and see whether we are doing the right thing or not. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the board looked around, and then we said we have to do what we call re-evaluation of what we've already done. And in our evaluation, we have been using various methods of evaluation. Initially, we were using hazard-based, but then, as the doctor has said, we moved ahead to go and look at risk-based analysis. Now, in the risk-based analysis approach, we look at the inherent property of a given molecule. In the first case, we have to start by the point that all pesticides are harmful. But we have some which are less harmful than others, because we have to balance the risk, we have to look at the values, and we have to look at the economics on what we are supposed to do. So yes, we have put in place mechanisms that we have used, and out of the 32 molecules that were highlighted in the petition, we have looked at 20 molecules. Because to assess one molecule requires a lot of resources and a lot of time, and we can comfortably say that we have looked at 20 of them, and out of the 20, around 10 are going to be removed out of the market come the end of this year, and the remaining 10, we looked at the risks and the balances, and we found that if used according to the label instructions, they should not be able to cause any harm to the user and even to the environment. Okay,
which then again opens up flips us to the next page of the know-how, the knowledge and the awareness.
Yes.
So you have 12 more remaining that will be subjected to examination and then a decision.
Yes.
So what does it then take here? Because you have mentioned the resource aspect, and we live in a country where critical institutions are underfunded, grossly underfunded for that matter.
Yes.
And there is Parliament debating a critical component, and maybe there's not enough allocation to this very specific agency, which is very key. So how long will it take then for you to, again, do an examination of the remaining 12?
Now, for the remaining 12, we have targeted by the end of this year. I think we'll have had a result on that, because now what you are doing is that now the institution has allocated money so that you can be able now to get enough time and evaluate the remaining 12. So come the end of this year, we will be having a decision on the remaining 12. We cannot say that we have not done anything about that, but no, when you are doing the review, we have stages of review. First of all, we have to look at the molecule. Then we have to talk about public participation. We send our review to the public to have to participate and give us comments, and then from there we can now be able to marry the two and then come up with the right solutions. Remember, as we look at what we are having there, we need to look at, as I said, the value systems. Are they working or not? Are they going to provide solutions under our local situations or not? And do we have safer alternatives? Because you might end up removing one product which maybe in quote is saying is banned in the EU, but in Kenya it's required. Take, for example, a molecule like permethrin, which is very important when it comes to storage pests. These pests are not available in the EU. But when it comes to Kenya, we are talking about food losses. People grow crops, but when it comes now to storage, we have a lot of pests which destroy the maize. We have an example of say, places like in Ukampani, where people produce their crops and over 40% or 50% of the produce goes to waste. Why? Because of not using the right products.
All right. Of the 200 mentioned there by the lawmaker then,
yes.
What have you done about that?
Of the
200 pesticides?
Yeah, you know, when we are talking about now pesticides, we have what we call the active ingredient that is mixed up to come up with the end-use product. So out of the 32 active ingredients that are meant to kill, they came up with around 200 products. Yes. So in this 20 that we have found out, we are likely to move at around 100 products in the market.
Okay.
Yes.
Of the 20. And 10 which
of the 200,
so
almost half is going to begin to come out of the market.
Oh, that is out of
half of the 200.
20. Yeah,
yes.
You have done 10, and you have done 20.
We have done 20. Remaining 12.
And you are remaining with 12.
So out of what you have done and 20, then 100 products are going to be removed from the market.
Okay. 100 products will be removed from the market.
From the market, yes, by the end of this year.
Okay. Yes. Emmanuel, does that satisfy you as a stakeholder? And when you hear these very critical players giving an explanation as to what works for Europe may not work for us, and the vice versa, and does this satisfy the petition that you had and the voicing there done by the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, who comes from Uasin Gishu County, considered as one of the country's food belts?
Yeah, thanks, Abdi. I think, you know, by the way, I know these two seniors of mine, these gentlemen, and we have had this discussion for years. I might not have met Mr. Baraza before, but we have discussed for years. And what I see is what I like to call consistent inconsistency. You see, from the point where we started the discussion, the tone is like there's no problem. We are raising fake alarm. PCPB should not lie that they have been doing this review on their own. They only did this review after we took the petition to Parliament and the Parliamentary Health Committee instructed them to review. Now, you can already see that what Mr. Baraza is talking about, he's saying that out of the 32 active ingredients that we pointed out at the time, with the same discussion where we said, how come what is sometimes around 30% of our products are coming from Europe? What is produced in Europe and released to the market, used, and then afterwards withdrawn from the market? That's the term that Dr. used. Withdrawn or sometimes banned, but mostly sometimes because banning takes a lot of time. So let's talk about withdrawal. It has been introduced in the market in Europe. It has been used for some time. It has been found to have serious either environmental or human health impacts. And then it has been withdrawn. So those are the discussions that we were having. How come it is still being used here?
What is the head of the registration department here tells us 32 molecules is subjected 20 to examination.
Exactly.
After which 10 have been recommended to be removed or withdrawn. And then they have 12 to go, which is subject to, again, another examination process. Doesn't this satisfy then?
And that is why, when
because it says 10 is
like 100 products.
Products to be withdrawn from the market.
That is what I'm coming to, because before they did that, before they now listed these 10 active ingredients, which translates to a number of products, it can even be more than 100, because sometimes one active ingredient can be used in like 12 products or some number of products. Before they did that, what they don't want to admit is that it is because of what they are calling noise. It is because of what they are calling, like sensationalization of the issue. We brought out the issue before they caught it. So when civil society, when members of parliament are raising these issues, let us not take them lightly. That these people are saying they are not scientists, and the first thing we are told is you are arguing without science and you are arguing without research. We are the regulators. We know what we are doing. We are in control. They are not in control. That is the truth. When Mr. Baraza tells us that out of the 20 that they have reviewed, 10 of them they have left to be in the market because he's saying, if, and this is what he has said now, if they are used based on the instructions on the label, they are not going to cause harm. PCPB and AAK last year, 2022, did a survey, PCPB and AAK. AAK is the Agrochemical Association of Kenya, and PCPB. And they looked at how pesticides are used. And the same report that they did found out that only 1 out of 6 farmers use protective equipment when applying pesticides.
Okay.
This is their study. They also found out that only 15% of farmers store pesticides the right way away from children. So they are telling us that they have left some very hazardous material in the environment because they believe that farmers are going to use them in the right way. It's a lie. So we have a challenge here when we are not matching our context with the... So when you talk about the Europe system, which Dr. Ngaruya has rightly put that, in the Europe is hazard-based. Here, they are using a risk-based system.
Okay.
Why are they hanging on to the risk-based system? The hazard-based system, what he's not saying is very simple. It does not assume that the farmer is going to take precautionary measures.
Okay, but is it not then fair and important to acknowledge that not all pesticides are harmful when used according to the instruction?
Exactly. In
fact, for example, the agency directs or the manufacturer.
In fact, if you look at the pesticides that we have in the market, I was involved in an analysis where we were looking at the data of the pesticides imported. 76% of the pesticides that are in the market can be classified as highly hazardous pesticides, which means that they have very high potential, very serious potential to cause very serious impacts. So the potential of those pesticides causing impact is very high, 76%. 22% are chemical pesticides, but do not have that same potential. So we are not also blind to that we are not talking about ban all the pesticides or withdraw all the pesticides. But remember, only 2% of what is in the market is not chemical, it's biopesticides.
All right.
And it is the responsibility of PCPB to also start looking into how do they encourage alternatives to dangerous chemical pesticides that we know are highly hazardous.
All right, and which then brings us to the other next point, which is now the stakeholder approach that ought to be wholesale in the awareness creation. So, Dr. I'll come to you, but first let's have this soundbite from farmers in Lamu County, because we engaged some of them in preparation for this discussion around the pesticides and the farm inputs that farmers use. And these are farmers from the county of Lamu, and here is what they had to say.
Tangu hizi dawa zije mara hii mara ile, kwa ujumla Mpeketoni ama Lamu County kumekuwa na maradhi. Zamani hatukujua kansa inakuja vile inakuja. Hapa kuna mimea tunalima sana. Kuna vitu zinaitwa melon, kuna hizi mboga, kuna haya mahindi. Lakini yale madawa, hizi kampuni, kila kampuni inakuja inasema hii dawa ni nzuri, hii ni nzuri. Na kwa sababu mimi mkulima ninataka kile chakula kiwe kizuri kulingana na wadudu, unakuta tunatumia dawa aina nyingi ambazo leo unapiga hii, kesho unapiga hii, kesho kutwa hii, mtondogoo hii. Na hiyo tunaona imetuletea shida sababu tumekuwa na maradhi sana.
Sisi ndio tunakuza ile chakula nyingi ambao tunapata malori huja kubeba kwa mfano mahindi, ufuta, pamba. Lakini vile tunavyotumia kwa sasa imeonekana kuna hatari kubwa kwa sababu tumekuwa tukifanya visivyo. Tunapiga dawa ili tuweze kupata faida haraka kwa haraka. Ninalima lakini ndio ili mahindi ikauke haraka ninapiga dawa. Lakini naangalia ninadhuru ule mwingine siangalii. Mimi katika mawazo yangu ni pesa, nipate pesa haraka haraka nifanye biashara zangu.
Kuna wakati tunatumia hizo dawa itusaidii, na kuna wenye pia wanatuuzia dawa ambayo haina lebo, haina maandishi yoyote, anakuambia hii dawa nzuri, enda upige utafaulu, na kwa vile sasa mimea yako imeathirika itabidi uchukue. Na kile tungeomba serikali ya kaunti wawe wanatutembelea, kwa sababu tumekuwa tukiathirika, hatujui, hatuelewi, na tunafanya hayo kwa sababu hatujui. But tukiwa tunaweza kumbukwa, tunapewa mafundisho, hao maofisa wanatupitia, tunaweza pata maendeleo na tunaweza lima kilimo ambayo inaweza kutufaidi.
Kwa wale ambao ni wahusika sana wa madawa, waweze kutusaidia na kutuletea madawa ambayo yanastahili. Maana hakuna haja ya kutuletea dawa ambao hata ukipiga haifanyi kitu. Inasababisha mpaka wakulima wengine wanatafuta mbinu zao badala za kuharibu.
Okay, Daktari, they are raising fundamental questions, and I'm sure you have taken note of that. Here is also what the other lawmakers had said, including the Mbeere North MP, Geoffrey Ruku, during that heated session in Parliament about pesticides.
I would propose that the Minister of Agriculture to appear in front of the Committee of Agriculture, and I be summoned so that I can come and table the evidence which I have, the scientific journals which I have, to prove that whatever Bayer International or Bayer East Africa is selling in Kenya market as carcinogenic elements which are causing cancer in the Republic of Kenya.
We are an agricultural community, and the level of chemicals used in the sector, particularly on the potato growing area, is very high. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health should be in the forefront in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture in determining the kind of chemicals that are applied in our farms. Mr. Speaker, you realize this is not only causing cancer, it's also causing other illness within our community, like where I come from, Puri.
Kenya watu wengi sana wanaugua magonjwa ya saratani kwa sababu ya yale madawa ambayo yanatumiwa katika mashamba yetu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na sisi tusipokuwa makini, Mheshimiwa Spika, hospitali zetu zitajaa kila siku wagonjwa wa kansa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni dhahiri kuwa kuna watu wamejitokeza kwa kutaka kuweza kuvuna haraka haraka, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanatumia madawa ambayo yanaingizwa hapa kinyume na sheria, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuweza kunyunyizia mimea ndani ya mashamba, Mheshimiwa Spika, na inakuwa inadhuru sana wananchi, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Dr. Ngaruya, they have raised substantial issues that ought to be addressed by the board. So what's your response to the farmers and the lawmakers?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. As I said earlier, pesticides are potentially hazardous, but they are good if they are used in accordance with the label instructions. For the Ramu issue, we have had a team. In fact, even yesterday we had a team there. And what you have realized is that a lot of education and awareness creation is required in that region. We have also been working very closely with the county government, because one of the indicators is that they are using certain products outside the label instructions. We have information that they have been using a certain product to dry maize. Mm-hmm. That's not the registered use of that product. So we have a team that actually went there, they sampled some of the produce in Lamu, and they found some residues in those. And I think the samples were being taken yesterday, but the indications are that they are residues. So what is required to be done is that we need to educate our farmers, all of us, because, you know, county governments are supposed to do extension work so that farmers do not use any product for any purpose. When it comes to training and awareness creation, we have been partnering very closely with the county governments. We have been partnering with the Ministry of Agriculture, and we have also been working very closely with AAK Grow. And if all of us work together and farmers only use products for the registered purpose, then in that case, we will not have these issues. Okay. Then I also want to point out that when it comes to withdrawal of products, we did not just start withdrawing products or banning products because of a petition. Many, many years ago, we used to have DDT in the Kenyan market. DDT was those days a very good product. In a quote, it was almost being used on any crop. But through the intervention of PCPB, DDT was withdrawn from the Kenyan market. It is being used in South Africa, but it is not used here. Dimethoate. Dimethoate was there before. It was being used on various crops. It was also withdrawn from the Kenyan market through the initiative of PCPB and, of course, engaging stakeholders. We had another product called omethoate, which was also withdrawn long time ago before even the petition was filed in Parliament. So far, PCPB has banned a total of 45 products, not because of the petition, but historically. We've been evaluating, and it's because the science is quite dynamic when it comes to pesticides. Whenever new information comes by that informs that there could be potential danger to human or the environment, the board actually takes action and either bans or severely restricts the products. Methyl bromide is a very good example. It was withdrawn way back in the year 2015, long before the petition was filed. And although it was withdrawn, we still have a serious challenge in that methyl bromide is supposed to be used for fumigation of flowers or even other commodities. But with the time, other markets require that you have to treat export commodities with the methyl bromide. So although there is need to review and even withdraw certain products, there are also dictations from outside that require that we introduce certain products.
All right, and then still on you, Daktari, you clearly highlight cases of either misuse or overuse, and quite heavy. It's concern is what's raised there with regards to carcinogenic content and how this is exposing many farmers to health issues. Though can largely be handled by another government agency, but how are you then as an agency playing that needed critical role in forestalling such cases when you can as well, besides undertaking a review and withdrawal substantially after your scientific processes and examination, empower the farmers to awareness campaigns to reduce cases of misuse or overuse, as we have heard from the farmers in Lamu County?
Thank you. As I said earlier, before any product is allowed for use in this country, it goes through rigorous assessment. There are very many studies that are done on test animals. We have acute oral, acute dermal, acute inhalation, eye irritation, and one of the other studies, which is long-term, is carcinogenicity. Carcinogenicity means that there are rats that are fed over time, and then they are observed after about 2 years to see whether there is any indications of any carcinogenic potential. So if we have products that are registered in Kenya, they have gone through, all of them have gone through the same assessment, and once we release them into the market, it means that under the recommended rate, the dose, and the use, there should be no concerns. Glyphosate is one good example. There are indications out there that it could cause some problems. But if you look at the dose that is allowed for use in Kenya, and if people use protective gear as indicated on the label, then there should be no concern.
Yeah. Ojepat, as a farmer, I presume.
Yeah.
Of course, many farmers, a majority, I can affront, are not as privileged as you are in terms of the data that you have, the know-how, the literacy in terms of what you can use as an input and whatnot. But many farmers are struggling with that. Then how do you induce a judicious use of products that are approved but still appear to be hazardous and as expressed by the farmers there? And what needs to be fixed then? Because if the problem is now moved away from the agency, which does its examination, then approves certain products or pesticides for use, but still it's hazardous because of how it's used. So how will your farmers then be brought on board in this regard? Because it will take a teamwork, is it, and an effort from the stakeholders?
Yeah, thanks, Abdi. Allow me go one step back just address something that was raised earlier. I did mention that sometimes we make very dangerous statements.
By who?
By particularly the politicians and the anti-pesticide crusaders. I come from a position where we are using products. And I said earlier that we are serving a market, both in the domestic market and in the export market. Products, for example, for the export market, every country gives us an approved list of the pesticide they would like us to use in Kenya for purposes of exporting to their destination. And we strictly adhere to that. Whether they are registered in this country, it is something that we now sit down with them and say, this molecule that Europe, for example, wants us to use, we have looked at your data, it's not registered, how do we go about it? There's a lot of stakeholder consultation. We are even guided by each market on what they require. So that is what we adhere to. In the domestic market, though, we have a challenge. Number one, we have a problem with the Kenyan consumer. The Kenyan consumer demands nothing, because they either know nothing or they have not been sensitized enough to ask certain questions. But even before I get to the consumer, Abdi, it's painful that today we wake up in the morning and look at PCPB. Parliament has a PCPB policy review, the bill. Dr. Ngaruya can confirm.
Yeah.
It's more than 15 years. It's been sitting in Parliament. It has not been enacted by Parliament, the same Parliament that is making noise. And one of the recommendations in that bill says the person who sells the pesticide must meet a certain qualification, must have a certain qualification.
That's the seller.
That's the seller.
Where the farmer goes and knocks on. Okay.
Today, there is no way PCPB will go and enforce certain things because there is no law to guide them to arrest or punish anybody who sells pesticide because of qualification. Opposite to the pharmaceuticals, you cannot dispense a pharmaceutical unless you are registered, unless you are known, unless you have certain qualifications. So it's a double speak here. Whereas parliamentarians are shouting and say pesticide is the issue, they have a responsibility to pass that bill quickly so that they raise the threshold and ensure that nobody dispenses or advises on pesticides unless they have qualification.
Okay, point taken. I'll allow you to finish, no problem. I'll give you the time. Point well noted.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a majority of Kenyans or a majority of you are no fan of Kenyan politicians given their disastrous record in Parliament and not prioritizing issues that are of concern to the public, including how they acrimoniously at times debate issues that are very substantial in nature and they are feed from the same traffic strategy in taking care of their interests. But let's deal with the crisis at hand. Then there is a pending bill, and I'm sure that's a concern to all of you and all Kenyans. But here now is a crisis we have on our hands, because if then someone can knock onto a shop and buy because of the lacking regulatory measures to enforce that, then how do we then address this crisis on our hands at this time before that is considered and fixed by Parliament through the passing of that bill, which then becomes a law?
Let me say this. For example, now as we speak, from the membership of the organization that I sit in, we have what we call outreach programs. Each member who has any farmers, like now we have a team in Nandi that are training farmers in Nandi on the use on good agricultural practices. But what we need to do, Abdi, as stakeholders, is that the government of Kenya, through the Ministry of Agriculture, through the private sector, ourselves, need to have a concerted effort, and yourselves, in terms of educating. And I always say this, I've used this example before, IEBC in Kenya, when it comes to election, they will tell you, you have 6 ballot boxes. This color for this color for this, this color for this. And it becomes a campaign that goes on all media houses, all media platforms, and we all go to the polling station knowing that I must get 6 ballot papers. If I don't get 6 ballot papers, I have a problem. So what we need to do here is to work together, starting with the county government, because agriculture was devolved. Can I tell you today, Abdi, that the ratio between one extension service provider to the farmer in some counties is 1 to 30,000. In some places is 1 to 20,000. In some places is 1 to 15,000 if they're lucky. And we have not enshrouded within ourselves a policy, a concept of ensuring that every village has service providers from the private sector, apart from the active horticulture or agricultural areas where we have a lot of export. If you go, for example, an example of Makueni County, in 2012, I did participate in training service providers in Makueni, who today substitute the county government extension services. So what we need to do as stakeholders, as a matter of urgency, is that we need to have a quick engagement and say, how do we ensure that the farmer knows what to check? You see the way you go and have a checklist when you're opening a bank account? They tell you you need an ID, you need this, you need this. We need to have that concerted effort. But just to finish on this.
Yes, let me just, Barasa, I'll take your point. Yes, please, you had a point. Proceed.
Thank you, Abdi. I wanted to say that before these products come in the market, after we have done a lot of review, all that information is summarized on what we call a label. And we have just heard what has been said there is that farmers are in a hurry to apply to get results. So what PCPB has done is that because we realize that most Kenyan farmers don't read the label, we have introduced what we call spray service providers. We are training people who can now take spraying as a job, who can be able to read the label and advise the farmer level correctly. So the farmer doesn't have just to go and apply the product by themselves. We have a team of people who have been trained and they can do that so that they can earn a living by, their work will only be spraying, so that now we can be able to avoid the issue of overuse and the issue of overexposure of these products to the users because of the low uptake of reading of the label in Kenya.
And another fundamental question then arises, Mr. Barasa, given that you head the registration department at the Pest Control Products Board, do we have official data on national pesticide use in Kenya?
Yes, we have done surveys which have indicated that actually, we have particular levels of users of products in Kenya. So we have done surveys, and that the information can be available at the PCPB and on the PCPB website. So the information is available.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Emmanuel.
Abdi, before Emmanuel comes, please, briefly. This is what I want to say. Let's not ignore one thing, that we are here as an agricultural country, and we are one. The issue that has been raised from Lamu is clearly an issue of education. It's clearly a deliberate misuse of information provided. If the product has been registered for certain reason, and you choose that product for drying maize, honestly speaking, at that point in time, we will want to say, where is our education system? And I want to go back to I want to recommend here that when I grew up in our village, we used to have what we call barazas. Village barazas that we will always meet with the chief every month to assess the situation. In my opinion, what we need to urgently go back to is get the chiefs and assistant chiefs to restart the baraza conversation, because during those barazas, there was somebody from the Ministry of Agriculture, there was somebody from the Ministry of Social Services, there was an issue reporting about security issues. I feel we need to get that conversation going back, because that is the only way, even as we wait for Parliament to go through this, and as Parliament even passes the bill, Abdi, in terms of budgetary allocation, look at Ministry of Health today and Ministry of Agriculture. Ministry of Agriculture, from the protocols that Kenya has signed, they are supposed to have been allocated a minimum of 10% of the budgets to be able to get some of that devolved into extension services. Today, if you look at the current budget, Ministry of Agriculture gets less than 3%. When it goes to the county, it's even worse, because since devolution, agriculture has actually died in the county governments, because extension services are not a priority in some countries. Some counties have done very well. If you go to Taita Taveta, for example, if you go to Nakuru, for example, they have employed extension services. However, you have one person per ward. One ward has 15,000 farmers. How do you get one person to do that? So I want to recommend a complementarity effort between government agencies and private sector to be able to push this. But most importantly, our legislators, when they're sitting together allocating budgets, can they look at agriculture? This being what we call, for lack of a better term, a backbone of this country. How do you have a backbone that you don't support and expect the backbone to support the entire economy?
And it's the backbone that
now, when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to our export, I want to make this clear. And the reason why I'm saying I need to make this clear is sometimes we make statements that scare the market out there. When we say Kenya is using banned pesticides, what are you telling us? You are telling us that Kenyans are careless. And yet it could just be a fraction of a few people. If you look at what the constituency and the people we represent, Abdi, I can go out with you now. They have a record of what they planted, when they planted, what they sprayed, when they sprayed, what scouting, what informed a decision. There's a decision mechanism that applies before a product is sprayed. And we have disposal mechanisms, end to end. Unfortunately, we're only controlling 5% of what we produce in Kenya. 95% that we produce in Kenya is consumed locally. So the reason why the domestic space must quickly be activated, and this starts with you as a media person, this starts with legislators, and this starts with the consumer in Kenya. Should also be asking questions instead of complaining. Lastly, there is no data. The last I checked, there's a cancer center in Kenyatta. Emmanuel, tell me if there's a data that shows pesticide cause cancer from that cancer center. Today. If you can give me that statistics, then we will tell the farmers the challenges you're having with cancer is because of pesticide. But we go to cancer center, it's a voluntary. Please go and visit. They can tell you data by data whether what products, what causes cancer, how many deaths have been caused by a pesticide. So that we don't panic.
You know, Ojepat has a very nice watch, but he's not using it. We are almost out of time. And they have said a lot of things that I would like you to just allow me to disabuse the viewers.
Please. I make your point.
There is data on the use of pesticides. PCPB does not have it. Today, if you ask them how much of the products that are being used are used for what, they will not tell you from their fingertips, because they are not looking at the sector as closely as it is. These two gentlemen from PCPB are very senior gentlemen. They are nice people. I know Dr. Ngaruya, I've interacted with him. He's very competent. But PCPB, in the structure of PCPB, is not sufficient to regulate the sector. That's the point I want to make very clear. So when he says that he has a team in Lamu, because that team is in Lamu, how many other counties, are they in all the counties today looking at certain issues? They are not, because the PCPB does not have the capacity. And that is something that we have to confront. And if you talk about funding, whether you talk about funding, you talk about anything else, but from my analysis, I've worked in this space for some time, I know that they do not have the capacity to enforce even the regulations that they have.
Okay, then what does it take? You'll proceed. I'll give you the time. You'll finish on your next point. What then does it take, Dr. Ngaruya and company, to enforce those regulations that you have said?
The first thing...
That brings us to the doorstep of Parliament, is it?
Exactly.
All right. And given the conduct of politicians in our country and them held in low esteem by the public, and unless an issue is sanctioned by State House or the executive, they seem not to treat it as important. Here you have a very fundamental subject on our food systems and what goes into it, yet Parliament for years has not considered a crucial bill before it. You as well have to blame policy players, including Parliament, is it?
Exactly. I'm not blaming them. I'm stating the facts that the PCPB that we have today does not have the capacity. And I know when I raise that, the first thing they will say is that they don't work in isolation. They also work with KEFIS. They also work with the other entities. And that is the explanation that we are given by all agencies in this country that are tasked with ensuring food safety issues are maintained. All of them say, we work with so and so and so and so, so we have the capacity. They don't have the capacity. So we do not have capacity in this country to deal with food safety issues. When Ojepat is saying very clearly that for 5% of what is being exported, and I know he's a very powerful man in that space, and when he says, I trust that what he's saying is true, that the produce that is exported is checked from land preparation. They start from there, from land preparation, from what fertilizer you start planting with, where you get the seedlings. It is checked because of export. But 95% is not checked by anyone. And he has rightly said it, that the Kenyan consumer is asking for nothing. And if the Kenyan consumer is asking for that, and it's exactly pointing out back to, and that's why I really insist that there's a very clear, consistent inconsistency that we have to see here. That the same people who are saying that we should not be worried are the same people who are telling us if farmers use the labels, if farmers follow the instructions. I have told you an analysis, an assessment that was done by PCPB themselves found out that only 1 in 6 farmers use protective equipment. Now, there are products in this market that are carcinogenic. At least 24 products, the last time I checked, that are registered are carcinogenic. And this is
registered
not
by
PCPB.
Okay.
And
is that so? Just hang on. Just the head of registration is here. Is that so?
That is not true.
Are you saying, no, let me ask him directly. Are you saying that all the pesticide products that are registered are not cancer causing? All of them, there is no product that can cause cancer?
You know, when it comes to cancer, or causation of cancer,
yes, there are many factors.
You cannot blame pesticides on that. And 2, we have categories of classification. We have 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So in our list, we do not have a product that can cause cancer in class 1A or 1B.
Okay, just the arbiter here. So in the establishment that you have said here that it's not cancer causing, and you have established that through scientific examination.
So what he's saying, what they are basically saying, if you translate that to a layman who is listening to us today, that anything that is registered by PCPB cannot cause cancer. And that is the misinformation.
No, that's not the point he said, to be fair to him. Okay, Emmanuel, allow me to hold it into account, because this is a show that 6 answers. And this is the discussion we're having for the public to get an understanding, including the farmers who are watching, so that they get the information they require, which they may not be privy to from the board members here who are represented. Of the 24 items that you have itemized as carcinogenic or cancer-causing, how did you establish that?
This is information, even from the manufacturers of these products. You see, when we talk about the reason why PCPB exists, is because this is not milk. They are not regulating milk. They are not regulating water. And Mr. Ngaruya said that pesticides, in fact, what he's saying that they are generally toxic. If pesticides were generally toxic, he would not have his job. Pesticides are inherently toxic. They are poisons. In fact, the thing of calling them dawa is a fallacy that we should stop. This is not dawa. It is sumu. It is poison. And that is why they have to be regulated as strictly with the current legal framework that is there for PCPB. So them saying that there is no product that can cause cancer. I'm not saying the pesticides are the ones causing cancer. Let's understand clearly.
You said
I'm not cut from that piece of cloth that says pesticides cause cancer. I'm saying exposure with contact that they can cause cancer. This is a fact. There are pesticides that are neurotoxic, which means with contact with a human being, they that are neurotoxic, which means with contact with a human being, they can cause neurological conditions, issues. This is not my creation, and this is why the same products work on insects. They work in the insects by causing those problems to the insects, and that is why they are regulated. And the truth of the matter is, we will not run away from having pesticides in the market. As Mr. Ngaruya has said, pesticides are a necessary evil. I agree with that. That there are certain pests or certain challenges in production that you have to use pesticides on. But we also have to agree that, considering what they have all said about the market, about farmers not reading labels, about the education not working, about extension not being there, that we must agree that in such a situation, Abdi, the best thing to do is to withdraw the highly hazardous pesticides from the market as a first step before you build a system that Mr. Ojepat is talking about, where someone can be able to check from planting to harvesting what has been used. Another thing that I would like to highlight and disabuse the viewers from is the narrative of locust, that because we had locust one time, that we always have to keep these products in the market. PCPB themselves have admitted that they have removed 10 active ingredients. That's a lot from the market. And they removed these 10 because of the noise that was made by civil society. So let's not lie to each other that they were just scouting and then they realized that 10. And Abdi, 52%, you asked about data, 52% of all pesticides products that are used in the market, 52% are herbicides. Okay? About 21% are insecticides and 27% are insecticides. This is the category of, if you look at import data of pesticides into this market,
okay,
these are the numbers. So what it tells you is that we are not importing pesticides because of locusts. We are not importing because of mosquito. A lot of pesticides that are being sprayed are because of weeds. So even when you talk about IPM and alternative solutions,
yeah,
we really have an avenue to look at alternatives and reduce the load.
Point made. Yes. Dr. Ngaro, your hand was up.
Yeah, thank you. There is a common principle that we use in risk assessment, and it goes like this: is that dose that makes a poison. I want to explain a bit. Salt, for instance, is edible. We like it when it is in food, but if you take high doses, it can cause problems. Water, if you drink a glass like the one you have there, Abdi, it's good for you. But if you are put in Lake Victoria where there's a lot of water and you take all of it, it's a problem. This morning, I'm sure when you are coming this way, you drove in a vehicle. That vehicle has petrol. Petrol has a hazard. It is flammable. It can catch fire. But you still came using that vehicle. Why? Because petrol is located in a tank at the back, and then there's a cork, and then the plugs in the vehicle are placed somewhere in front, so that you separate the hazard, which is now the flammable petrol, and the engine and yourself. And you came very safely. So pesticides, in short, are potentially hazardous. And
they are poisons.
There is no way you can control a pest, really, without using, if you are to do commercial production, without using a pesticide. So what we do is that we do risk assessment. Where we look at the hazard and we say, okay, it's flammable, yes, but can we do some mitigation? How is the exposure? Is Abdi, when he's driving, is he exposed to this petrol at the back? No, he's not exposed. So although they may be hazardous, there are quite a number of elements that we have to look at before we make decisions. Then there are many studies that are done on animals. Animals have to die for us to live. When eventually they come up with what we call endpoint, then we introduced what we call a safety factor, where now if you have to translate animal studies, and there are many studies, mutagenicity, carcinogenicity, acute dermal, eye irritation, skin sensitization, all those studies are done on animals. Then we introduce a safety factor of 10, now to move from animal studies to a human being. If a product is not observed to have any effect on an animal, then we put a safety factor of 10 to move from the animal study to human. Then from there, we have the vulnerable groups like the children and women, another safety factor of 10. So if a product is not found to have any effects at around 10 milligrams, then you reduce that by 100, and then you come up with what we call the reference dose. That is what is now used to say, I think this product is relatively safe. It didn't cause any effects on an animal, then you reduce by 100 times. Then you come up with that cutoff point. So that is the way we compare animal studies. So although there could be some potential effects, by the time now we make a decision that we are going to register a product, we look at the animal studies, put the safety factors, and then come up with a reference point.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Ojabat.
No, I was just saying, I think, again, I started by saying, let's be very objective. The companies and the molecules that are being imported into this country, the companies that manufacture them are also the ones that are manufacturing pharmaceuticals. And I want us to borrow a little bit from pharmaceuticals. And this is not to this team. This is to the entire country. If today I am found dispensing pharmaceuticals in a wrong way, I will be arrested. However, when it comes to the discipline of taking pharmaceuticals, we have had very little of very little cases of abuse, because it is directly affecting you and I in terms of us taking them. If we look at crops that cannot talk the same way we look at ourselves, then we will be able to say, let's keep the processes and the procedures and the instructions followed. But what I wanted to say here, friends, to reinforce this, that the product called pesticide is not going to go away from Kenya. We will use pesticide as long as we are in the tropics. We will continue reviewing. Now we are dealing with a pest called false coloring moth. It was not here a few years ago. Today, it came in through chilies. Now we are dealing with flowers. it has gone to avocado. You see now, the studies will continue change. Before that, we had fall armyworm, something that was not here. So as long as we are here, Abdi, yes. I want to say this, that there will be different pests that will invade this territory in different times, and most of them do not warn us. We just want to be very clear that the regulator here, first I want to say this, Parliament needs to allocate the regulator more resources to ensure that they build that capacity we are talking about. Even as we call them names, we also need to say how many. Look at education. We are making noise, but teachers are being employed. Food is an important component. What are we doing in terms of building capacity of the agencies? Now, as we do that, Abdi, I want to ask the media, starting with you. And I like that we have this show here, that we have more of this, even as we balance this with our political colleagues, so that they also understand, because it is not about moving emotions. It's about the reality on the matter, keeping the records. Yes. And lastly, because I may not get an opportunity, I want to give an assurance to Kenyans that we have all the goodwill. We can be able to work if all of us can collapse our interests together and see how we focus in developing this agricultural sector.
Thank you.
Together.
Yes, Bwana Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Banabdi. I'd like to say that security starts with me, it starts with you as a norm. And then number two, farmers have to change their attitude towards use of these products, because from the recent studies that we did, we have some farmers who say that what I plant and grow for myself, I use these ones here. And what I'm planting to sell, I'm using a different one here. So what they're using at home, they apply according to the label instructions. And what they're going to send to the market, they overuse the products. So maybe farmers are looking at products, but not about the security of the health of their own and the population. So we have to change our attitude so that we can be able now to apply these products according to the label instructions. So we have a duty to play. The blame came not there because security starts with us, and we are talking about food security.
Okay, and then besides the role that you play as a critical player, how do you address issues that have been raised of a corporate responsibility as to the use and how they manufacture the pesticides? How do you keep an eye on that as well?
Well, let me try to answer that. We as PCPB are committed to ensuring that what comes in the market is safe in terms of products. And then number two, we are committed to liaising with stakeholders to ensure that they know about pesticides and that they're supposed to be using these products according to the best instructions as far as the label is concerned.
So you can confirm it's an area of interest for you as well?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Ngaro, you have a point on that?
Thank you.
Briefly, as we sample the feedback. Yes. I'll come to you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you very much. As a PCPB, we have been working very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture. We have expressed the need, and they have also seen the need to increase capacity within PCPB. So we have been working with other stakeholders who have been supporting us in areas where we have a bit of weaknesses. Like we work very closely with universities when it comes to doing efficacy trials, mainly to determine the minimum effective dose that we can use for registering products in Kenya. So indeed, there is need to enhance capacity within PCPB.
Okay. Emmanuel, the final word.
Yeah, I think, Abdi, to just put it straight, is that we are also blaming the wrong person. If we know that the farmers are not educated enough, that they don't have the right knowledge, that they are prone to misusing products, why are we still giving them the products? So it is important that the people that bring these products to the market are taking the responsibility of that. When you talk about even disposal of containers, for example, if you have a 20-liter container containing a certain pesticide, it should not be used now for water carry. We see these things every day. We see people using pesticide containers to carry milk, and the regulator knows that. The problem that we have is that we are not really just keen to confront the issue. In March, there was an advert that was actually running on Citizen TV of guys, I think it was from Green Life, and I pointed out, I raised it, and I even tagged Citizen TV, and they changed the advert, that there was an advert running on national television of people spraying a product without protective gear. And PCPB was not working on that. So when you talk about farmers doing the wrong thing, they are doing the wrong thing because they have been desensitized. They have been told to call pesticides dawa instead of calling them sumu. And that desensitization, if Abdi, if I tell you this is a bottle of sumu, and this is a bottle of dawa, the way you are treating them is going to be completely different. And therefore, it is our responsibility to tell farmers the right thing. We cannot tell farmers the wrong thing and expect them to do the right thing.
Thank you.
And the best thing to do now is to remove the highly hazardous pesticides from the market until the market matures to deal with those products.
Let's now sample the feedback here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. So this is what you are saying on X, formerly Twitter. Remy Butia says, with no regular monitoring system in the Kenyan market, the consumer simply doesn't know the pesticide exposure they are facing. Gabi Wakasiaka says, Kenyans have been exposed to harmful chemicals due to the lack of control measures. The beef we are eating is from cattle that have been fattened by use of boosters and multivitamins administered by quacks. Gode Barasawere says we need to strengthen our research bodies in terms of scientific and biological know-how. Our farmers, all of scales, must be safeguarded against any kind of harmful chemicals and pesticides. Frank Orinda says it's sad government and he means its agencies can't protect us from harmful pesticides, and they will still have the audacity to come out to defend failure. We have not seen those charged with the responsibilities to look into pesticides, conduct awareness, to educate farmers on usage. Okelo Mwalimu says if the government is committed in safeguarding consumers against harmful farm produce, she must send agricultural field officers to inspect the pesticides sold in agrovets around the country and take action against those found to be stocking harmful ones. Anything else? Ni story too. Njine Lazaro says concerns over use of harmful pest control in Kenya is an idea whose time has come. This particular discussion should be taken serious by the Ministry of Health and Quality Control in order to save our environment for both human beings, cattle and wild animals. Sanixon Dugure says, my understanding has always been that if there is an indication that pesticides are harmful, that they would not be allowed to be used. The Sleepy Monitoring Body bears the biggest blame for the damages caused by banned pesticides. Bob Otieno Wino says, agriculture is the backbone of our country's biggest economic contributor, and there must have been a body for checking these products unless someone slept on his job through corruption to let these harmful pesticide used by farmers. Gentlemen, your time is appreciated. We are 2 minutes past the hour, and many thanks for gracing us with your time. Dr. Paul Ngaruya is the Acting General Manager, Research and Strategy, the Pest Control Products Board. Thank you for your time, much appreciated. We look forward to more conversation. Okisegere Ojabat is the Chief Executive Officer of the Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya, Emmanuel Atamba, Food Systems and Policy Expert, and Barasa Wanyonyi is the Head of Registration Department at the Pest Control Products Board. Your time is all appreciated, and many thanks for gracing us with your presence. We look forward to more engagements with you folks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks to you too for working up with us here on the broadcast. The hashtag on Next has been Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Up next is Health and Lifestyle with Safin Achieng, Ouma, and Trevor will be here tomorrow morning on Thursday. Till then, good morning.